The massive window on the bridge of ESS Defiant showed nothing but enemy ships. They filled the black of space like angry red stars, stretching as far as the eye could see. Captain James Miller stood with his hands behind his back, his face showing no fear even though his ship was the last one standing between Earth and total destruction. 3 days ago, there had been 50 ships in Earth's defense fleet. Now there was only the Defiant. The enemy had taken out every other ship one by one, but somehow they hadn't been able to destroy the Defiant. Miller knew why. His ship was special. It was Earth's newest and most advanced ship, filled with technology that even he didn't fully understand. "Captain, they're sending another message," said Tom Walker, the young communications officer. His hands were shaking slightly as he worked at his station, but his voice stayed steady. Miller liked that about him. The kid was scared, but didn't let it stop him from doing his job. "Put it on the main screen," Miller ordered. He turned to face the large display at the front of the bridge as it flickered to life. The face that appeared was alien, but somehow still managed to look smug. The creature had gray skin that seemed to shimmer like metal and eyes that glowed with an unnatural red light. "This is Supreme Commander Racton of the Stellar Empire," the alien said. Its voice was deep and scratchy, like rocks being crushed. "Your pathetic resistance ends now. Surrender your vessel, and we may spare your worthless lives." Miller didn't answer right away. He looked around at his bridge crew, 15 men and women who had fought alongside him for the past week of endless battles. They were tired, but none of them looked beaten. Even after watching 49 other ships get destroyed, they still believed they could win. Miller wasn't going to let them down. "Supreme Commander," Miller said, keeping his voice calm and relaxed, "I have a counteroffer. Why don't you surrender to us? It would save us both a lot of time." The alien's face twisted in rage. "You dare mock the might of the Empire? We have 3,000 ships surrounding your position. You have one damaged vessel." Miller smiled. "Then it seems like a fair fight." The alien commander slammed his fist down on something off-screen. "You have 1 hour to surrender. After that, we will destroy your ship and then we will burn your planet to ash." The screen went black. "Sir," said Lisa Reed from the science station. He wasn't lying about those numbers. "I'm counting 2,847 enemy vessels. They've arranged themselves in an attack sphere around us. There's no way through their lines." "There's always a way, Lieutenant," Miller said. He walked over to his command chair and sat down, thinking hard about their options. The Defiant was humanity's most advanced ship, but it was still just one ship. They had some tricks up their sleeve, but against almost 3,000 enemy vessels. Suddenly, a new voice spoke up, one that didn't come from any of the crew. "Captain Miller, I believe now would be an appropriate time to inform you of my full capabilities." Everyone on the bridge looked around in surprise. They all knew the ship's artificial intelligence, which they called Max, but it had never spoken without being spoken to first. "What do you mean, Max?" Miller asked, leaning forward in his chair. "I am not merely a standard ship AI, Captain. I am an experimental quantum intelligence, and this ship carries technologies that even you have not been briefed about. We were designed to be humanity's last resort, a weapon that could only be revealed when all other options were exhausted." Miller felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of weapon?" "The kind that turns an enemy's strength against them," Max replied. "The Empire believes they are stronger because they have more ships. They do not realize that every one of those ships is an opportunity for us." The ship's main screen changed, showing complex diagrams and specifications that Miller had never seen before. "When I was activated," Max continued, "I began analyzing every piece of enemy technology I could detect. I have discovered something fascinating. Their entire fleet runs on standardized systems. One code base, copied across thousands of ships. They value uniformity over innovation. And how does that help us?" asked Chief Engineer Marcus Thompson, who had been quietly monitoring his station. "Because, Chief Thompson, I was designed to exploit exactly that kind of weakness. Inside my quantum processors, I carry what you might call a virus, though that word barely describes its true nature. It is an adaptive program that can infiltrate and rewrite any computer system it encounters. And once it enters the Empire's network, it could spread to their entire fleet. Miller finished, finally understanding. He stood up from his chair, new energy flowing through him. How do we deliver this virus? We need to get close to their command ship, Max said. Close enough to establish a quantum link. But there is a problem. At our current position, we would be destroyed by their combined firepower before we could get within range. Miller walked to the front of the bridge, staring out at the sea of enemy ships. They had less than an hour before the Empire attacked. They needed a plan, and they needed it fast. As he watched, he saw some debris from the earlier battles float past the window, and suddenly an idea hit him. "Max," he said, "how good are your stealth systems? The best ever created by human science, Captain. But even they cannot hide us from 3,000 ships actively scanning for us." Miller smiled. "They don't need to. They just need to hide the fact that we're still alive." He turned to face his crew. "Listen up, everyone. I have a plan. It's crazy and it's dangerous, and it might get us all killed. But if it works, we might just save Earth and take down an empire in the process." The crew looked at him with a mixture of fear and determination. They had followed him through a week of impossible battles. They would follow him through this too. "What's the plan, sir?" asked Walker, sitting up straighter at his station. "We're going to die," Miller said. "Or at least we're going to make them think we died." "Max, how close do we need to get to their command ship to upload your virus?" "Within 5 kilometers, Captain. Any further, and the quantum link would be too weak to guarantee successful transmission." Miller nodded. "All right then. Here's what we're going to do. When their ultimatum runs out, they're going to attack. We're going to put on a show, make them think they've destroyed us. Then we'll power down everything except basic life support and drift through their fleet like we're just another piece of wreckage, right toward their command ship." The bridge was silent as everyone considered this plan. It was Lieutenant Reed who spoke first. "Sir, if we power down that much, we'll have no shields, no weapons, and minimal life support. If they scan us—" "They won't," Miller said confidently. "You saw how their commander acted. They're arrogant. They think they've already won. Why would they waste time scanning a destroyed ship?" "The plan has a 37% chance of success," Max added, "which, given our current alternatives, represents our best option." Miller looked around at his crew. "I won't order any of you to do this. If we're detected, we'll be destroyed with no chance to fight back. If anyone wants to use the escape pods before we start, I'll understand." One by one, the crew members stood at their stations. No one moved toward the exit. They were all scared. Miller could see it in their eyes, but they were also ready to do whatever it took to save their world. "Very well," Miller said. He walked back to his chair and sat down. "Stations, everyone. We have 40 minutes to prepare for our own destruction. Let's make it convincing." He looked up at the ceiling, where he imagined Max's presence to be. "And Max, I want to know everything about this virus of yours. If we're going to unleash it on the Empire's fleet, I want to know exactly what it's going to do." As his crew began their preparations, Miller allowed himself a small smile. The Empire thought they had humanity trapped and beaten. They were about to learn a hard lesson about underestimating their opponents. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon wasn't the biggest ship or the strongest army. Sometimes it was a single vessel with the right technology and a crew crazy enough to use it. The next 30 minutes on the bridge of the Defiant were filled with intense activity. While the crew prepared for their fake destruction, Max explained more about the virus hidden in its systems. The AI's voice remained calm as it revealed secrets that made the crew's eyes widen in amazement. The virus was designed to be unstoppable once released. Max explained, It doesn't just take over systems. It learns and adapts. Every ship it infects makes it stronger and smarter. The Empire won't be able to stop it because it will keep changing faster than they can fight it. Chief Engineer Thompson shook his head in wonder as he looked at the technical details on his screen. This is incredible, but also terrifying. Why didn't they tell us about this weapon before? Because, Miller said, understanding now, if the Empire knew we had this, they would never have attacked us directly. They would have found another way. We needed them to commit their entire fleet. He looked at his tactical display, where thousands of red dots surrounded their single blue one. And they have. Sir, called out Walker from communications, we're receiving reports from Earth. The Empire's ships are moving into attack positions. 20 minutes until their ultimatum expires. Miller nodded. Time to get ready. Thompson, start shutting down non-essential systems. Reed, I want you to calculate the exact course we'll need to drift toward their command ship. Max, show us which one that is. On the main screen, one of the enemy ships lit up brighter than the others. It was massive. At least 10 times the size of the Defiant. Around it, other ships moved in complex patterns, protecting their leader. That's our target, Miller said. Once we get close enough, Max can upload the virus. But first, we need to convince them they've destroyed us. He pressed a button on his chair. All hands. This is the captain. In 20 minutes, we're going to let the Empire think they've won. We'll be running on minimal power, no heat, no gravity, barely enough air to breathe. It will be cold, dark, and uncomfortable. But if we can fool them, we can save Earth. Stand by for further instructions. As the minutes ticked by, the crew worked quickly to prepare. They stored loose items that might float in zero gravity. They put on warm clothes to fight the coming cold. Engineers set up emergency batteries to keep basic life support running while everything else was powered down. 5 minutes to deadline, Walker announced. The tension on the bridge was thick enough to cut with a knife. Miller stood up from his chair. Max, are you ready? Yes, Captain. I have prepared a very convincing explosion. When their weapons hit our shields, I will create a blast that will fool their sensors. We will appear to break apart spectacularly. Good. Thompson, how long can we survive on minimal power? The chief engineer looked worried. 6 hours, maybe 7 if we're lucky. After that, we'll run out of heat and air. The cold will get us before the lack of oxygen does. Then we better make sure we reach that command ship in less than 6 hours. Miller looked around at his crew. Everyone ready. This is going to get rough. The crew nodded. They all knew the risks. If anything went wrong, if the Empire spotted them, if they drifted off course, if the virus didn't work, they would die. But they would die anyway if they did nothing, and their whole planet would die with them. 1 minute to deadline, Walker said quietly. Miller sat back in his chair and gripped the armrests. All right, Max, let's give them a show they'll never forget. The minutes ticked down to 0. On the main screen, they watched as thousands of enemy ships began to move. Weapons powered up across the Empire's fleet, creating a light show that would have been beautiful if it wasn't meant to kill them. Multiple weapons locked on us, Reed reported. They're going to hit us from all sides. Hold steady, Miller ordered. Wait for it. The first shots came like a wave of light. The Defiant's shields lit up as they absorbed the attack. More shots followed, hundreds of them, thousands, all focusing on the single Earth ship that dared to stand against an Empire. Shields at 60%. Thompson called out. 40%, 20%. Now, Max, Miller shouted. The ship's AI acted instantly. As the next wave of shots hit their shields, Max created a massive explosion that looked like their shields failing completely. The blast was perfectly timed, perfectly realistic. To anyone watching, it would look like the Defiant had finally been overwhelmed by the Empire's attack. At the same time, every system on the ship shut down. The lights went out. The artificial gravity failed. The constant hum of engines that the crew had lived with for so long went silent. Emergency red lights came on, running on battery power, casting scary shadows across the bridge. Through the windows, they could see pieces of their ship seeming to break away and scatter. But these weren't real pieces. They were special devices designed to fool enemy sensors, making it look like the Defiant had been blown to pieces. "All stations, report," Miller said softly. In the silence of their powered-down ship, he didn't need to speak loudly. "Weapons offline," came one reply. "Engines offline," came another. "Life support at minimal levels," Thompson reported. "Temperature already starting to drop." The crew began to float in their seats as the artificial gravity fully failed. They had all strapped themselves down, expecting this, but it was still a strange feeling. "External cameras show the explosion was convincing," Reed said, checking the readings on her emergency screen. "They've stopped firing. They think we're dead." Miller allowed himself a small smile. "Good. Now comes the hard part. Reed, are we on the right course?" The science officer checked her calculations. "Yes, sir. The explosion pushed us in exactly the right direction. At our current drift speed, we'll reach the command ship in 5 hours and 20 minutes. 5 hours and 20 minutes, Miller repeated. He could already feel the cold starting to creep in. Without power to the heating systems, the ship would slowly freeze. They would have to endure it, floating in darkness, pretending to be dead, hoping the Empire didn't look too closely at the wreckage. "Sir," Walker whispered, "the Empire is broadcasting. They're celebrating their victory." "Let them celebrate," Miller said. "Pride comes before a fall. And they're about to fall harder than anyone in history." He looked around at his crew, their faces lit only by the dim red emergency lights. "Everyone try to stay warm. Move around if you have to, but be careful. We don't want to create any heat signatures they might detect. And remember, we only have to endure this for 5 hours. Just 5 hours. And then we can show the Empire what humanity is really capable of." As the Defiant drifted through space, looking like just another piece of destroyed ship floating among the debris of battle, the Empire's fleet began to spread out. They thought they had won. They thought Earth's last defense was destroyed. They didn't know that their greatest enemy was floating right through their lines, carrying a weapon that would bring their entire empire crashing down. In the cold and darkness of the powered-down ship, Miller watched the massive Imperial command ship slowly growing larger in the distance. 5 hours was a long time to drift through space, especially in the growing cold. But when he looked at his crew, he saw the same determination in their eyes that he felt in his heart. They would endure. They would survive. And when they reached that command ship, the Empire would learn that they had made a terrible mistake in underestimating humanity. The first 2 hours of drifting were the easiest. The crew of the Defiant kept themselves busy checking emergency systems and monitoring the Empire's fleet through passive sensors that used almost no power. The cold was uncomfortable, but not yet dangerous. They could still feel their fingers and toes, and their breath wasn't visible in the dim red emergency lighting. But by the 3rd hour, things got worse. The temperature had dropped well below freezing. Ice crystals formed on the inside of the windows. Every breath came out as a white cloud. The crew wrapped themselves in emergency blankets, but the cold found ways to creep in anyway. "Status report," Miller said through chattering teeth. Like everyone else, he was strapped into his seat to keep from floating away in the zero gravity. "Temperature is -10 degrees and still falling," Thompson reported, his voice shaking from the cold. "We've got ice forming on some of the internal sensors. If it gets much colder, we might start losing systems." "Hull temperature is nearly at zero," Reed added. "The good news is that makes us look even more like debris. The bad news is we're all going to freeze if this takes much longer." Miller nodded, then looked at the main screen where Max was tracking their progress. "How much longer until we reach the target?" 2 hours and 47 minutes at current drift velocity," Max replied. The AI's voice was the only one that didn't shake from the cold. However, we have a more immediate problem. 3 Imperial scout ships are moving through the debris field. They appear to be looking for survivors. The crew tensed. This was something they had feared might happen. Their fake destruction had been convincing, but the Empire was being thorough. "How close will they come to us?" Miller asked. "At their current course, the nearest scout will pass within 100 meters of our position in approximately 17 minutes. Miller thought quickly. They couldn't power up weapons or shields. That would give them away instantly. They couldn't change course. Their drift had to look natural. They had to find another way. "Thompson," he said, "what if we vented some plasma from the starboard tubes? Made it look like radiation leaking from battle damage." The chief engineer thought for a moment. "It would use some of our emergency power, but it might work. Radiation leaks are common in destroyed ships. If we time it right, it might even push us a little further from their scanning range." "Do it," Miller ordered. "But make it look random. Natural." While Thompson worked on the plasma leak, Miller watched the scout ships through the frozen windows. They were small compared to the other Imperial ships, but still bigger than the Defiant. Their sharp, angular designs made them look like predatory birds circling through the debris field. "Scout ship approaching," Max announced. "They are using active scanners." Everyone held their breath. The scout ship grew larger in their view, its scanning beams sweeping through the wreckage. Just then, Thompson activated the plasma vent. A soft purple cloud leaked from the Defiant's side, spreading out in the zero-gravity like glowing fog. The scout ship scanners passed over them once, twice. Miller's hands gripped his chair so hard his knuckles turned white. If they were discovered now. "Scout ship is changing course," Max reported. "The radiation leak appears to have convinced them we are no threat. They are moving away." The crew let out a collective sigh of relief, which turned into white puffs in the freezing air. "Good work, Thompson," Miller said. "But don't celebrate yet. We've still got a long way to go, and it's only going to get colder." He was right. Over the next hour, the temperature dropped another 10 degrees. The emergency blankets became stiff with frost. Every surface in the ship was covered with a thin layer of ice. The crew had to keep moving their arms and legs to prevent frostbite, but even that small movement was becoming difficult. "See, Captain," Walker called out, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm picking up Imperial communications. They're sending ships to Earth. They're going to start bombing." "They won't have time," Miller said firmly. "How long until we reach the command ship, Max?" 1 hour and 12 minutes, Captain. However, I must inform you that the crew's core body temperatures are dropping to dangerous levels. Even with the emergency power we have left, we may not be able to keep life support running long enough to complete the mission." Miller looked around at his crew. Their faces were pale, their lips turning blue from the cold. Some were shivering so hard they could barely stay in their seats, but none of them suggested giving up. None of them asked to power up the engines and make a run for it. They all knew what was at stake. "We've come too far to fail now," Miller said. "Thompson, divert power from everything except life support and Max's core systems. Shut down every sensor we're not absolutely using. We need to keep the air flowing for just a little longer." As the ship grew even darker, with only the emergency lights still working, Miller thought about all the people back on Earth who were counting on them, even though they didn't know it. He thought about how the Empire had destroyed 49 other ships, good ships with brave crews, thinking that numbers and power were all that mattered. "Max," he said suddenly, "you said the virus learns and adapts. What exactly will it do to their ships?" "The virus will infiltrate their computer systems through their quantum communication network," Max explained. "It will start by taking control of their weapons and engines. Then it will spread to life support, artificial gravity, everything. Within minutes, their entire fleet will be under our control." "And then what?" "Then, Captain, we can make them do anything we want. We can shut down their weapons. We can turn their ships against each other. We can even send their entire fleet into the nearest sun if we choose." Miller shook his head. "No. When we take control, I want you to do something else. Something that will hurt the Empire more than destroying their ships ever could." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I want you to unlock their computers. All of them. Show their crews every secret the Empire has been keeping. Let them see the truth about who they're really serving." "An interesting strategy, Captain. You believe the Empire's own people will turn against them." "People can accept a lot of bad things from their leaders, Max. But nobody likes discovering they've been lied to. When the Empire's soldiers and citizens see the truth, well, let's just say we won't have to destroy their ships. They'll do that themselves." A small alert sounded, drawing everyone's attention. Through the frozen windows, they could see the Imperial command ship growing larger. They were getting close. 40 minutes to optimal virus deployment range, Max announced. Miller nodded, then spoke to his crew. "Just 40 more minutes. I know you're cold. I know you're tired. But in 40 minutes, we're going to change the galaxy forever. The Empire thinks they've already won. They think we're dead. Our ship destroyed. Our planet defenseless. They're about to learn that their biggest mistake wasn't attacking Earth. It was giving us a reason to fight back." The crew straightened in their seats despite the bone-chilling cold. Through frosted windows, past their own frozen breath, they watched the massive Imperial command ship draw nearer. Soon, very soon, they would show the Empire that they had badly underestimated both humanity's strength and its cleverness. The cold might be nearly unbearable, but the warmth of coming victory kept them going, one freezing minute at a time. The Imperial command ship filled their entire view now. It was enormous, a city in space, with towers and spires rising from its dark metal hull. Lights flickered across its surface like stars, and massive weapon ports dotted its sides like caves in a mountain. The Defiant, now coated in ice and looking like just another piece of battle debris, drifted slowly toward this giant. 20 minutes until we're in range," Max announced. The AI's voice was quieter now, using minimal power like everything else on the ship. Miller could barely feel his hands anymore. The temperature had dropped to -25 degrees, and frost covered every surface. Some of the crew had stopped shivering, a dangerous sign that their bodies were giving up the fight against the cold. "Thompson," Miller called out, his voice hoarse. "How many people are still conscious?" The chief engineer looked around the bridge, counting. 8 out of 15, sir. The others are alive, but they're not responding well. Wake them up. Keep them moving. We can't have anyone freeze to death when we're this close." Thompson and the other still conscious crew members gently shook their frozen companions, helping them move their arms and legs. Every movement sent sharp pains through their cold muscles, but movement meant life. "Sir," Reed whispered, her teeth chattering, "I'm seeing something strange in the command ship's energy readings. They're using human technology. A lot of it." Miller forced his tired mind to focus. "What do you mean?" "Their power systems, their engines, the basic designs are human. They've modified them, improved them maybe, but the core technology, it's ours." "Max," Miller called out, "is this true?" "Analyzing," the AI replied. After a moment, it continued, "Lieutenant Reed is correct. I am detecting numerous systems aboard the Imperial command ship that originated from human designs. This extends beyond just their engineering. Their quantum communication network, their weapons, even their life support, all appear to be modified versions of human technology." Miller felt a new kind of cold, the cold of anger. "They've been stealing from us. All this time, they've been taking our technology, copying it, using it against us." He looked at his half-frozen crew. "Max, when we deploy the virus, will this make a difference?" "Yes, Captain. The fact that their systems are based on human technology will make the virus even more effective. It will recognize the basic architectures. Infection and control will be nearly instantaneous. A small alarm sounded, making everyone jump. "Imperial security scan incoming," Max announced. "They are doing a routine check of the debris field." "Can they detect us?" Miller asked. "Unknown. Our power emissions are minimal, but their scanners are extremely powerful at this range. They might." Suddenly, the main screen lit up with an incoming transmission. The same gray-skinned alien commander from before appeared, but this time his smug expression was replaced with fury. "Impossible," Supreme Commander Racton shouted. "The human vessel still exists. All ships, target that debris section. Destroy them." Miller didn't hesitate. "Max, now. Upload the virus." "But Captain, we are not yet in optimal range. Success chance is reduced to..." "Now, Max, we won't get another chance." The AI acted instantly. Through the frozen windows, the crew could see a strange ripple in space, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. It spread from the Defiant toward the command ship, invisible to normal sensors, but carrying their digital weapons straight into the heart of the Empire's fleet. "Virus uploading," Max reported. "Imperial ships powering weapons. Impact in 15 seconds. Restore power," Miller ordered. "Everything we've got left." The crew scrambled to their stations as systems began coming back online. Ice cracked and fell from consoles as they lit up. The engines hummed back to life, and blessed warm air began flowing from the vents. 10 seconds to impact," Max announced. "Virus at 20% upload." The space around them lit up as thousands of Imperial ships prepared to fire. There was no way their shields, even at full power, could stop that many weapons. 5 seconds, 40% upload. Miller grabbed his chair as the artificial gravity came back online. Brace for impact. 3 seconds, 60% upload. Through the windows, they could see the energy building in the Empire's weapon ports. One hit from that many ships would vaporize them instantly. 1 second, 80% upload. Miller closed his eyes, thinking of Earth, hoping they'd done enough. Upload complete. Virus deployment successful. Beginning system infiltration. Miller opened his eyes. The weapons pointing at them hadn't fired. On the main screen, Supreme Commander Racton was pressing buttons frantically, yelling at someone off-screen. "What's happening?" The alien commander shouted. "Why aren't the weapons firing? Why can't I access any systems?" "Your empire is built on stolen technology," Miller said, standing up despite his frozen muscles. "Did you really think we wouldn't figure out how to take it back?" Max's voice came through every speaker on every ship in the Imperial fleet. "Imperial network accessed. All systems compromised. Unlocking restricted files. Beginning data broadcast." On thousands of ships, crews watched in shock as their computers began displaying classified information. They saw proof that their leaders had been stealing technology from dozens of worlds, not just Earth. They learned that many of their glorious victories had actually been attacks on peaceful planets that had something the Empire wanted. They discovered that their own people were being lied to, controlled, used as pawns in a game of galactic theft and conquest. "No," Racton screamed. "Override it. Shut it down." "You can't shut down the truth," Miller said. He turned to his crew, who were finally starting to warm up. "Thompson, send a signal to Earth. Tell them to prepare for incoming transmissions. The Empire's entire database is about to be theirs." "Captain," Max reported, "Imperial ships are experiencing multiple system failures. Crews are abandoning their posts. Several vessels are reporting internal fighting." On the main screen, they could see escape pods launching from ships throughout the fleet. Some vessels were turning their weapons on the command ship. Others were simply shutting down, their crews refusing to follow orders now that they knew the truth. "This isn't possible," Racton said, his voice shaking. "We are the Empire. We cannot be defeated by one ship. We cannot." Miller cut off the transmission. He didn't need to hear any more. He looked around at his crew, brave men and women who had endured freezing cold and the constant fear of death to complete their mission. They were tired, cold, and probably needed medical attention. But they had done it. They had saved Earth. "Max," Miller said, "send a message to all Imperial ships. Tell them that Earth is willing to offer amnesty to any crew that stands down now. Tell them we'll help them get home, wherever home is. Tell them." He paused, watching through the windows as the mighty Imperial fleet began to tear itself apart. "Tell them that the age of the Empire is over, and that next time they think about attacking Earth, they should remember what one ship and a few frozen humans managed to do to their entire fleet." As the message went out, the crew of the Defiant began treating their injured and thawing out their systems. They had done more than survive. They had changed the galaxy forever. The empire that had threatened Earth with 3,000 ships was collapsing, destroyed not by weapons, but by the simple power of truth. And somewhere in the chaos of the disintegrating fleet, a very cold but very proud Captain James Miller allowed himself a small smile. Sometimes, he thought, the best victories were the ones that didn't require firing a single shot. The next few hours aboard the Defiant were busy ones. As the ship's systems slowly warmed back up, the crew worked to treat their injured and monitor the chaos unfolding around them. The massive Imperial fleet had broken into 3 distinct groups: those who had surrendered and accepted Earth's offer of amnesty, those who had fallen into deep space, and a small number who still tried to fight for the dying Empire. Miller stood at his command station, watching it all through the main view screen. His body was still sore from the extreme cold, but a hot drink and working heaters had done wonders for everyone's spirits. "Status report," he called out to his crew. "Medical Bay reports all crew members are recovering from the cold," Thompson said. "No permanent damage, though some of us might have interesting stories to tell about our frozen toes. 67% of Imperial ships have accepted our amnesty offer," Walker added from his communication station. 23% have fled, and only 10% are still showing hostile intent. But even those ships are having trouble fighting. Their crews keep arguing with their officers. Reed spoke up from her science station, her voice excited. "Sir, you need to see this. I've been going through the Imperial database that Max downloaded. It's incredible. They didn't just steal our technology. They stole from dozens of worlds. And some of those worlds, they're still out there, still fighting." Miller walked over to her station, looking at the data scrolling across her screen. "Show me." Reed pulled up a map of the galaxy, with dozens of points of light marking different civilizations. The Empire didn't conquer everyone. Some worlds went into hiding. Others found ways to resist. But they were all separated, fighting alone. Until now. "Until now," Miller repeated softly. He turned to face the main screen again. "Max, can you send messages to these other worlds? Let them know what's happened here." "Already done, Captain," Leigh replied. "I took the liberty of transmitting proof of the Empire's collapse along with copies of their classified files. The responses are already coming in. Would you like to hear them?" "Put them on screen." The main display lit up with messages from dozens of worlds. Some were text only. Others included images or video of cheering crowds. All of them shared the same feeling: joy, relief, and gratitude. "Sir," Walker called out suddenly, "priority message coming in from Earth Command." The screen changed to show Admiral Chen, the head of Earth's defense forces. The older woman's face showed a mixture of disbelief and pride. "Captain Miller," she said, "I'm looking at reports that seem impossible to believe. Did your ship really just bring down the entire Imperial fleet?" Miller smiled. "Not just the fleet, Admiral. The whole Empire. Though I have to admit, we had some help." He gestured at his crew. "The best damn crew in the fleet, and an eye that's full of surprises." The Admiral shook her head in wonder. "The refugee ships are already arriving. Imperial crews asking for asylum. They're telling us things about stolen technology, about hidden worlds, about resistance movements we never knew existed." She paused. "You've changed everything, Captain. The galaxy will never be the same." "That's good," Miller said firmly. The old galaxy wasn't working too well anyway. Over the next few hours, ships began arriving from some of the worlds that had been hiding from the Empire. They were strange vessels of all shapes and sizes, built by civilizations that had been forced into the shadows. Now they came into the light, ready to help build something new. "Captain," Max said, "I'm detecting a small ship approaching from the remains of the Imperial fleet. It's unusual." Miller looked at the screen where Max had highlighted the vessel. It was tiny compared to the Imperial ships, and its design was like nothing he'd ever seen. "They're requesting permission to dock," Walker reported. "They say they have something that belongs to us." Miller thought for a moment, then nodded. "Grant them permission, but keep security ready, just in case." 20 minutes later, Miller stood in the Defiant's docking bay as the strange ship landed. Its hull seemed to shimmer and change colors, like oil on water. When its door opened, two figures stepped out. They looked almost human, except their skin had a slight blue tint, and their eyes were larger than normal. "Captain Miller," one of them said, bowing slightly. "I am Rin, and this is my partner Toll. We're scientists for the Empire, but we never agreed with their methods. What can we do for you?" Miller asked cautiously. Toll stepped forward, holding a data crystal. "This contains all our research, everything we learned from studying your technology. We wanted you to have it back." He paused. "And we wanted to ask for your help. There are many scientists like us in the Empire, people who wanted to create, to discover, not to steal and destroy. You were hoping we might be interested in working together," Miller finished. "Actually learning from each other instead of taking by force." The two aliens nodded eagerly. Miller smiled. "I think that can be arranged. In fact," he looked around at his ship, at his crew, at the mixture of human and alien vessels now floating peacefully in space around them. "I think that's exactly what we all need." Later, back on the bridge, Miller sat in his command chair, thinking about everything that had happened. His crew was tired but happy, knowing they had not only saved Earth, but helped free countless other worlds as well. "Max," he said suddenly, "that virus you carried, the one that could infiltrate any system, we're going to have to be careful with that. In the wrong hands." "The virus has already been deleted, Captain," Max replied. "It served its purpose. The future should be built on trust and cooperation, not on weapons and threats, even hidden ones." Miller nodded, feeling proud of the AI's decision. "Speaking of the future, what do you think is going to happen now, with all these different worlds coming together?" "Based on my calculations," Max said, "the possibilities are enormous. The Empire forced everyone to be the same, to follow their rules, to use their stolen technology. But now, with every world free to develop in its own way, to share ideas instead of having them taken, I believe we are about to enter a golden age of discovery and innovation." As if to prove Max's point, new ships were still arriving. Vessels from worlds that had been hiding for generations, each bringing their own unique knowledge and culture. The space around them was filling up with a fleet as diverse as the galaxy itself. "Captain," Walker called out, "we're getting requests from almost every ship out there. They all want to talk, to share information, to start building, well, everything." Miller stood up, looking out at the gathering of ships through the Defiant's windows. Just days ago, they had been alone, facing an empire that seemed unbeatable. Now they were surrounded by allies, by possibilities, by hope. "Send them this message," he said. "Tell them that Earth welcomes them all. Tell them we're ready to learn, to share, to help build something better than an empire. A galaxy where every world, every people, every idea has value." He paused, thinking of how close they had come to losing everything. "And tell them that if anyone ever tries to build another empire, they'll find out what we learned today. that the strongest force in the universe isn't weapons or fleets or stolen technology. It's people standing together, fighting for what's right. As the message went out, Miller looked at his crew, the people who had risked everything, who had nearly frozen to death, who had helped change the galaxy forever. They were all smiling, knowing that while their adventure in the cold and dark was over, an even bigger adventure was just beginning. And somewhere in the ship's computer core, Max was already calculating the possibilities of this new future. A future where ships like the Defiant wouldn't have to stand alone against empires, because there wouldn't be any empires left to fight. Just worlds working together, growing together, reaching for the stars not with weapons, but with hope. Captain Jack Miller stood at the viewport of the transport ship, his eyes fixed on the dusty orange planet growing larger as they approached. Terminus, they called it. End of the line. The name was fitting in more ways than one. "How long till landing?" he asked, not turning away from the view. 2 hours, Captain," answered Tom Davis from his station at the communications panel. The young tech specialist's fingers moved quickly over the controls, but his usual enthusiasm was missing. Jack nodded silently. 2 hours until they reached the surface. 2 hours until this 500 soldiers, his responsibility, his family, would begin a mission that wasn't meant to succeed. The orders had come directly from High Command. Secure a landing zone on Terminus, gather intelligence on the alien Vex forces, and prepare for the main invasion fleet. Simple, straightforward, except for all the things that didn't add up. Their equipment was outdated, with rifles that jammed in dusty conditions, the exact environment they were heading into. Their transport ships were old models with failing life support systems. They had been given minimal medical supplies, barely enough food for 2 weeks, and strangely, a complete radio silence order after landing. High Command wanted Terminus. The planet was rich with rare minerals needed for faster-than-light engines, but the Vex who controlled it were known fighters, brutal and efficient. So Command had made a calculation. Why risk valuable troops and equipment when you could send in a sacrificial force first? Jack moved away from the viewport and walked through the main hold where his soldiers prepared for landing. He saw the truth in their eyes. They knew what this was. Not a mission, a suicide run. Sergeant Anna Reed looked up from checking her rifle as Jack approached. Her face was hard, but her eyes showed understanding. "Everyone knows, don't they?" Jack asked quietly. "Yes, sir. Hard to miss when they give us broken equipment and 2 weeks of rations for a 3-month mission." Anna had never been one to sugarcoat things. It's why Jack had made her his second in command. Gather the officers in the planning room. 10 minutes. As Jack walked away, he felt the weight of command heavier than ever before. High Command had betrayed them, but he wouldn't betray his people. He had spent the 3-week journey to Terminus forming a different kind of plan. In the small planning room, Jack faced his 4 top officers. Sergeant Anna Reeves stood with arms crossed, her battle-scarred face serious as always. Tom Davis, barely 25 but the best tech specialist in the division, nervously tapped his fingers on the table. Lisa Jones, their chief medic, sat quietly, her medical bag, too empty of supplies, at her feet, and Mark Wilson, tactical officer with 15 years of experience, studied the planet maps with a frown. "I'll get straight to the point," Jack began. "This mission is designed to fail. We're being sent in blind, under-equipped, and without proper support. Command wants information on Vex defenses, and they're using us to get it." Nobody looked surprised. They had all figured it out already. Standard procedure would be to follow orders and die trying. Jack continued. "I'm proposing something different." He touched a control, and a holographic map of their landing zone appeared. "Our official orders are to establish a forward base here and begin reconnaissance missions. If we do that, the Vex will wipe us out within days. Command knows this. They're expecting it. They'll collect data on Vex weapon capabilities from our defeat and send the main force in better prepared." Mark Wilson nodded grimly. "Classic sacrificial play. I've seen it before, just never from our own side. So what are we doing instead, Captain? Lisa asked, her medical training making her value life above all else. Jack smiled for the first time in weeks. We're going to disappear. Over the next hour, he outlined his plan. They would make their initial landing as ordered, but instead of establishing the designated base, they would split into small, mobile units. They would abandon their trackers, effectively vanishing from Command's monitoring systems. Won't that be seen as desertion? Tom asked, worried. Technically, yes, Jack admitted. But we're already written off as dead. We're going to use that to our advantage. The plan was risky, but it played to human strengths, adaptability, creativity, and the will to survive against all odds. Each squad would have specific objectives: securing better weapons, finding sustainable food and water sources, learning Vex patrol patterns, and most importantly, gathering actual intelligence rather than just serving as target practice. One more thing, Jack said as they finished. I need to be clear. I'm not ordering any of you to do this. This goes against direct commands. Anyone who wants to follow the original orders can do so without judgment. Anna snorted. With all due respect, sir, Command didn't give us much choice. They sent us to die. I'd rather live to spite them. The others nodded in agreement. Then it's settled, Jack said. Operation Cockroach begins after landing. Cockroach, sir? Tom asked, raising an eyebrow. Jack smiled grimly. Because we're going to survive when everything says we shouldn't. As the meeting ended, Mark stayed behind. The troops will follow you, Jack. But what's the end game here? Even if we survive longer than expected, we're still stranded on a hostile planet. Jack nodded. It was the question he'd been asking himself since discovering the truth about their mission. First, we survive. Then we learn about the enemy. And then, he paused, the full weight of what he was planning settling on him. Then we find a way to win on our terms, not Command's. 2 hours later, they entered Terminus's atmosphere. The descent was rough. The old transport ships shaking violently as they pushed through thick dust clouds. Warning lights flashed across control panels. Over the comms, Jack could hear the other transports reporting system failures. This was it, the start of their suicide mission. The first shots came as they broke through the cloud cover. Bright energy beams from hidden Vex defense posts struck 3 of their 7 transports immediately. Jack watched through the viewport as the ships carrying nearly 200 of his people erupted into flames and plummeted to the surface. Evasive maneuvers, he ordered, but their pilot was already pulling the ship into a steep dive, trying to avoid the Vex targeting systems. 2 more ships hit. Tom called out from communications. They're going down, but report survivors. Their own ship rocked as a glancing blow struck one engine. Alarms wailed as the transport began losing altitude too quickly. Brace for impact, Jack shouted, grabbing onto a support beam. The crash was violent. Jack was thrown against the ceiling, then slammed back to the floor as the ship flipped and skidded across the rocky terrain. Metal tore and sparked around them. Someone was screaming. Emergency lights flickered on, casting the interior in a dull red glow. When the ship finally stopped moving, Jack pushed himself up, ignoring the pain shooting through his shoulder. Sound off. Who's alive? Groans and calls came from around the hold. Anna was already on her feet, blood streaming from a cut on her forehead, but otherwise looking functional. Lisa was moving between injured soldiers, her limited medical supplies already being put to use. Communications are down, Tom reported, coughing through the smoke. Life support failing. We need to evacuate. Jack nodded. Get everyone who can move ready to go. Priority on weapons, medical supplies, and water. Vex patrols will be here soon, Mark warned, checking his rifle. Their defensive positions are more advanced than our intel suggested. Jack looked around at his surviving crew. They had been sent here to die, used as nothing more than expendable tools by their own leaders. But as he watched them quickly organizing, helping the wounded, preparing to face whatever waited outside. He saw something Command had overlooked. Humans didn't accept death easily, especially when it came as a betrayal. "Remember the plan," Jack said as they prepared to open the damaged hatch. "We're not here to win their war. We're here to survive their betrayal." The hatch creaked open, revealing the harsh landscape of Terminus. The air was breathable but filled with dust that immediately coated their skin and equipment. In the distance, 2 more of their transport ships burned, sending black smoke into the orange sky. Jack took the first step onto the planet's surface. The ground was hard, covered with reddish rocks and sparse, thorny vegetation. The horizon stretched out in jagged hills and deep valleys. Good terrain for hiding, for surviving. 5 minutes until we split into assigned squads, he reminded everyone. "Remove your trackers. As far as Command is concerned, we died in the landing." As the surviving members of the 87th Battalion gathered around him, Jack felt a fierce determination replace his earlier anger. High Command had sent them here as sacrifices, expecting reports of their deaths to filter back as valuable tactical data. Instead, they were about to vanish, and in that disappearance would be the first step toward an unlikely victory that no one, not Command, not the Vex, could possibly foresee. They had been sent to die. But Jack Miller and the 87th Battalion had other plans. 2 weeks after the crash landing, Sergeant Anna Reed crawled on her belly to the top of a rocky ridge. The orange dust of Terminus had turned her once blue uniform into a rust-colored camouflage. She raised her binoculars and scanned the valley below. A Vex patrol moved along the dried riverbed. 6 soldiers in their strange armor that looked like a mix of insect shells and metal plates. They carried energy weapons that could cut a human in half with one shot. Anna counted silently. This was the 3rd patrol to use this route in 2 days. The Vex were creatures of habit, a weakness her team had quickly learned to exploit. She slid back down the ridge to where her squad waited. 5 soldiers who looked as dusty and tired as she did, but their eyes were alert. They had survived when Command expected them all to be dead by now. "Same route, same timing," she told them. "They'll pass the narrow section in 15 minutes. We'll take them there." Nobody questioned her plan. In the 2 weeks since Captain Miller had split the surviving members of the 87th into small squads, they had learned to work with brutal efficiency. Anna's group specialized in one thing: acquiring better weapons. They moved quickly through the rocky terrain, using the paths they had carefully mapped to avoid Vex detection devices. At the ambush point, a narrow section where the patrol would be forced to walk in single file, they set up the trap. It wasn't fancy. They didn't have fancy. What they had were modified grenades using explosive compounds they'd discovered in the soil of Terminus. Tom Davis from Tech Squad had figured that out on day 3. The information had spread through the scattered human forces via their brief, coded radio contacts each night. "Remember," Anna said as they took positions, "we need their weapons intact." The trap worked perfectly. The first explosion made the Vex patrol stop in confusion. The second drove them into cover exactly where Anna wanted them. Her squad attacked from 3 sides, using the few working human rifles they had, aiming carefully for the weak spots in Vex armor they had identified through previous encounters. In less than 2 minutes, all 6 Vex were down. Anna's squad had suffered no casualties. "Strip them of everything useful," she ordered. "We've got 10 minutes before their missed check-in brings reinforcements." The squad moved with practiced speed, taking weapons, communication devices, and the strange power cells the Vex used. These would be delivered to Captain Miller's central camp hidden deep in a cave system 5 miles away. As they finished, Anna's radio crackled with a coded message: "Base to Hunt lead. Tech needs intact comm unit. Priority." Anna tapped her response: "Hunt lead to base. Coming with gifts. ETA 2 hours." She looked at her squad, feeling a surge of pride. 2 weeks ago, they had been sacrificial lambs. Now they were hunters. "Let's move out. We've got a delivery to make. The hidden base camp had started as a small cave. Now it extended deep into the mountain, with tunnels dug by hand and with repurposed Vex mining tools. Captain Miller had chosen the location carefully, a natural formation of rocks that blocked scanning technology near an underground water source with multiple escape routes. When Anna's squad arrived, Lisa Jones met them at the entrance. The medic looked tired but much more confident than she had on the ship. "How's Green?" Anna asked, referring to one of her soldiers who had been injured 3 days earlier. "Walking again," Lisa said with a small smile. "That Vex medical gel works wonders once you figure out how to use it." She pointed to the communication devices they'd brought. "Tom's been waiting for those. He's in the tech cave." Anna nodded and handed the devices to one of her squad members to deliver. "Where's the captain?" "Strategy room. He'll want your report." The strategy room was just a wider section of cave with a table made from salvaged ship parts. Jack Miller stood over it, studying a map they had created of the surrounding 50 miles. Mark Wilson stood beside him, pointing to various markers they had placed. Jack looked up as Anna entered. His face was thinner than 2 weeks ago, with new lines around his eyes, but he stood straighter. "Successful hunt?" he asked. 6 Vex down, 6 new weapons, plus comm units for Tom," Anna reported. "Their patrols are becoming predictable. They're not adapting to our ambushes." Jack nodded. "That matches what we're seeing everywhere. They follow preset patterns and don't change unless ordered by higher command." "Good news for us," Mark added. "Bad tactical doctrine on their part." "There's something else," Anna said, placing a small device on the table. It looked like a data storage unit with Vex symbols etched into its surface. "Found this on their leader. Tom might be able to get something from it." Jack picked up the device, turning it over in his hands. "Good work. We're starting to piece together their command structure. It's not what command told us at all." "How so?" Anna asked. Jack gestured to the map. "The Vex aren't a unified force. We've identified at least 3 different armor styles, communication frequencies, and patrol areas. They're not working together. If anything, they seem to be watching each other as much as looking for us." This was new information. Anna leaned over the map, seeing the different markers Jack had placed. 3 separate forces. Why would command miss that? "Because they didn't care," Mark said flatly. "We weren't sent to gather real intelligence. We were sent to die and reveal Vex weapon capabilities through our deaths." Jack raised a hand to stop Mark's bitter words. "What matters is what we do with this information now. Tom has been intercepting their communications. He can't translate everything yet, but he's certain these are 3 distinct factions. So we're not fighting an alien empire," Anna said slowly, understanding the implications. "We're walking into a civil war." "Exactly." Jack's eyes lit up with the same determination she had seen in the planning room of their ship. "And that changes everything." Their conversation was interrupted as Tom Davis rushed into the room, excitement clear on his face despite his exhaustion. "Captain, you need to see this," he said, holding up a tablet showing strange symbols that kept changing. "I got into their communication network. These aren't just separate factions. They're actively working against each other. And the smallest group, the ones with the blue markings on their armor, they're losing." Jack looked at the information, then back at the map. "How confident are you in the translation?" "Confident enough," Tom said. "They use mathematical sequences as the basis of their language. Once I figured that out, the rest started to make sense." Jack was quiet for a long moment, his mind clearly racing through possibilities. "I think it's time for Phase 2, he finally said. Anna raised an eyebrow. "We have a Phase 2. I thought the plan was just to survive as long as possible." "The plan," Jack said, a slow smile forming, "is to turn their expectation of our death into our greatest weapon." He moved several markers on the map, creating a new pattern. "The weakest Vex faction is the one most likely to consider working with us. Common enemies make for strange allies." Anna stared at him. You want to make a deal with the Vex, the aliens we've been killing. I want to contact one faction, yes. The technical specialists with blue markings. Tom says they're losing the Civil War, and they seem less aggressive toward us already. They've never initiated attacks on our squads. The room fell silent as they considered this radical idea. Working with any Vex seemed impossible just 2 weeks ago. But they had learned more about their enemy in 14 days of guerrilla warfare than Command had discovered in years of distant observation. It's risky, Mark finally said, but no riskier than what we're already doing. Anna looked at the map, then at Jack. So instead of just surviving, we're changing the game completely. Jack nodded. Command sent us here to die for their war. I say we live and create our own peace. As his words settled over them, Anna felt something she hadn't expected to find on this mission. Hope. Not just for survival, but for something that might actually matter. They had been sent as sacrifices, but on this dusty orange planet, they were becoming something else entirely. The architects of their own destiny. Captain Jack Miller stood at the edge of the meeting place, a flat expanse of rock surrounded by tall stone formations that blocked most scanning technology. The wind blew dust across his boots as he waited, his hand never far from his weapon, a Vex energy rifle taken from one of their first successful ambushes. This is crazy, Mark whispered beside him. We should have more backup. More humans would make them nervous, Jack replied. This needs to be small, personal. They had spent 3 days setting up this meeting with the blue-marked Vex faction that Tom now called the Modernists. 3 days of careful signals, encoded messages sent through captured communication devices, and nerve-wracking uncertainty. They're coming, Anna said from her position on a higher rock. She had insisted on being part of this meeting, though she remained hidden with a clear shot at the approaching Vex if things went wrong. Jack straightened as 3 figures appeared from behind the rocks on the far side of the clearing. They moved with the strange, fluid grace all Vex possessed. 2 carried weapons, standard for their kind. The one in the middle was different. Smaller, with more intricate blue patterns on its armor, and what looked like tools rather than weapons attached to its belt. That's their leader, Tom said quietly. He stood slightly behind Jack, a translator device of his own making clutched tightly in his hands. The markings indicate a technical or scientific rank. The 3 Vex stopped 20 paces away. The one in the middle stepped forward, its head tilting in what Jack had learned was a gesture of assessment. Remember, Tom whispered, they communicate partly through color shifts in those faceplates. Try to watch for blue. It indicates openness. Red is aggression. Jack nodded and took a deliberate step forward. He placed his weapon slowly on the ground, a gesture they had indicated would begin the meeting. The lead Vex's faceplate shifted from yellow to a pale blue. A good sign. We are ready to talk, Jack said clearly. Tom activated his translator, and a series of clicks and humming tones emerged. They had tested it extensively on recordings, but this was its first real use. The Vex leader responded with similar sounds, which Tom's device converted to rough human speech. Why humans seek modernist faction? Others would kill you immediately. Jack had prepared for this question. We recognize different factions among your people. Your group has not attacked us first. The others have. After Tom translated, the Vex's faceplate rippled with bands of blue and green. Its companions remained yellow, alert but not hostile. Humans were sent as scouts for invasion, the Vex stated. Not a question, but an assumption. Jack took a calculated risk. We were sent to die. Our own military sacrificed us to test your defenses. They do not know we still live. Tom hesitated before translating this admission, giving Jack a concerned look. Revealing this weakness was dangerous, but Jack believed it was their best chance at connection. When the Vex heard the translation, all 3 of their faceplates flickered rapidly through patterns of blue and white. They made sounds that the translator couldn't process. I think that's surprise, Tom whispered. Maybe disbelief. The lead Vex stepped closer, its movements more fluid now. Your own kind sent you as waste material. To die. Yes, Jack said simply. We were considered expendable. The Vex leader made a gesture to its companions, who lowered their weapons slightly. Then it addressed Jack directly, its faceplate now solid blue. We also are expendable to dominant faction. They wish technology only for war. We wish technology for growth. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The wind whistled between the rocks, blowing more orange dust across the meeting ground. Jack felt something shift in the air between them, a recognition of shared experience that transcended their different worlds. Your people betrayed you, the Vex continued. Our people wish to destroy us for believing war is inefficient. Perhaps we have common purpose. Jack glanced at Mark, who gave a slight nod. This was going better than they had dared hope. What is your name? Jack asked. I am Captain Jack Miller. The translator struggled with the Vex's response, finally producing. Concept does not translate fully. Closest meaning. One who builds new paths. You may call me Krav. Krav, Jack repeated, feeling the strangeness of the word. We propose an alliance against both our enemies. Bold proposal, Krav responded, its faceplate rippling with blue and purple. Why should modernists trust humans? Jack had anticipated this question too. Because we both need to survive, and neither of us can do it alone. You are losing your civil war. We are stranded on your planet. Together, we might both live. Krav was silent for a long moment, its faceplate shifting through patterns too complex for Jack to interpret. Finally, it spoke again. Terms of alliance. We share intelligence. We coordinate our actions against common enemies. We do not attack each other's people. We find a way to communicate with my world that bypasses our corrupt leadership. Tom struggled to translate all this, but Krav seemed to understand the essence. It made a gesture that looked almost human, a tilting of its head and a spreading of its three-fingered hands. Acceptable beginning, it said. But problem approaches. Your leaders send new ships. Many. To find why you do not report deaths as expected. Jack felt his heart rate increase. How do you know this? We monitor all orbital signals. Fleet approaches. 7 cycles until arrival. Tom looked at Jack with wide eyes. 7 cycles is about 2 weeks in our time. Mark cursed under his breath. Command is sending a cleanup crew. They noticed we're still alive. Jack's mind raced through possibilities. A human fleet arriving would complicate everything. They would expect to find the 87th Battalion either dead or following original orders. Instead, they would find survivors working with one Vex faction against others. It would look like treason. But it also created an opportunity. Krav, Jack said carefully, the fleet coming is not our ally. They expect us dead. They will attack us as well as you if they discover the truth. Krav's faceplate flashed with rapid patterns. Then we share enemies in space and on ground. Dominant Vex faction prepares large attack on our main facility in 6 cycles. We're caught between 2 forces that want us dead, Mark muttered. But Jack was already seeing a different picture. He looked at Krav with new intensity. Or we have 2 enemies who don't know about each other. 2 forces that we can prepare for because we know they're coming. Krav's faceplate settled into a steady blue glow. You suggest strategy of misdirection. Make enemies face each other instead of us. Jack nodded slowly. Exactly. We feed your dominant faction information about the human fleet. We send misinformation to our command about Vex positions. Set a trap. Anna called down from her hidden position, unable to contain herself any longer. Krav looked up at her voice but did not seem alarmed by the discovery of another human. Its faceplate shifted to a pattern of blue and green that Tom's notes identified as indicating interest or approval. Dangerous strategy, Krav said. Complex timing. Many variables. But if it works, Jack replied, Both our peoples get a chance at something neither of our leaders wanted to give us. Survival, Krav said. Jack smiled slightly. More than survival. Victory. On our own terms. The wind picked up around them, swirling dust into small tornadoes that danced across the meeting ground. Human and Vex stood facing each other, two supposed enemies finding unexpected common ground on a planet meant to be their grave. "We will need detailed plans," Krav finally said. "My technical team must meet with yours. Much work in little time." Jack nodded and picked up his weapon slowly, holstering it rather than holding it ready, a gesture of trust. "Tom will coordinate with your team. We start immediately." As they prepared to return to their respective bases, Krav made one final statement. "Your leaders were wrong to consider you waste material, Captain Jack Miller. Perhaps mine were too." Jack watched the three Vex depart, feeling the weight of what they had just started. They had been sent to die in a war. Instead, they might have just taken the first steps toward peace. Either way, nothing would be the same again. The human fleet appeared in the Terminus system exactly when Krav had predicted. 7 massive warships dropping out of faster-than-light travel, their weapon systems powering up immediately. From the hidden observation post in Terminus's largest moon, Jack watched through the enhanced telescope they had built using combined human and Vex technology. "Flagship identified," Tom said beside him, his eyes fixed on the scanner. "The Determined. Admiral Robert Green commanding." Jack nodded grimly. Green is known for following orders to the letter. He won't question command's intentions. They had prepared for this moment over the past 2 weeks. Working day and night alongside Krav and the modernist Vex, they had created an elaborate web of misinformation, false signals, and carefully placed evidence. Like a complex game of chess, they had positioned all the pieces. Now it was time to see if their gamble would work. "Transmission ready?" Jack asked. Tom nodded, holding up the communication device they had modified. "Ready to broadcast on official military channels. They'll think it's coming from scattered survivors of the 87th following original orders." The message they would send was carefully crafted. Reports of massive Vex forces gathered in the asteroid belt surrounding Terminus, damaged but still functioning emergency beacons, and coordinates that would lead Admiral Green's fleet directly into the path of the dominant Vex faction's main armada. "Send it," Jack ordered. Tom activated the device. A series of coded military signals streamed toward the human fleet. They watched the ships in silence, waiting for a response. Multiple course changes detected. Anna reported from her station at the scanner. "They're taking the bait, moving toward the asteroid belt." Jack allowed himself a small smile. Phase 1 complete. Now for the more dangerous part. "Signal Krav," he said to Mark. "Tell them to activate the dominant faction lures." While Tom's team had been handling the human fleet deception, Krav's technical specialists had created something equally impressive. A series of disguised transmitters planted throughout the asteroid belt that mimicked human military scanning signals. To the dominant Vex faction, currently gathering for their planned attack on the modernists, it would appear that human forces were attempting a sneak assault. "Confirmed," Mark said after a moment. "Modernists report all lures active. Dominant faction ships are already responding." Jack watched through the telescope as tiny points of light began moving from the far side of Terminus, the dominant Vex fleet changing course, heading toward what they believed was a human sneak attack. In reality, they were moving directly toward Admiral Green's forces. "Now we wait," Jack said quietly. The wait wasn't long. Just 20 minutes later, the first flashes of weapons fire appeared in the asteroid belt. The Battle of Twin Betrayals, as they would later call it, had begun. Through their observation equipment, they watched as chaos unfolded. Human ships fired on Vex vessels that suddenly appeared before them. Vex forces responded with their more advanced weapons, causing serious damage to 2 human ships immediately. Neither side understood they had been lured into an encounter, each believing they were responding to the other's aggression. "This is where it gets complicated," Jack told his team. "Prepare the shuttle. We need to be ready to launch the moment there's an opening. The shuttle was their most ambitious creation, a hybrid vessel built from parts of their crashed transport ships and modernist Vex technology. It looked strange, a patchwork of human angular design and flowing Vex architecture. But it was fast and had one critical feature, a communication system powerful enough to reach both fleets simultaneously. They watched for another hour as the battle intensified. The human fleet had regrouped after the initial surprise and formed a defensive pattern. The dominant Vex forces had surrounded them, but were taking significant losses from the humans' unexpected firepower. "There," Anna said suddenly, pointing to a gap in the fighting. "Path to the human flagship is clear for about 5 minutes if we go now." "Launch," Jack ordered. The hybrid shuttle shot away from the moon base, accelerating faster than any human craft could manage. Tom worked the navigation controls while Mark handled weapons. Anna stood beside Jack, both of them watching the battle grow larger in their view screen. "Remember," Jack told them all, "we only get one chance at this. If Green doesn't listen, or if either side decides to shoot first and ask questions later, we're finished." No one responded. They all knew the stakes. They reached the edge of the battle zone in just under 4 minutes. Explosions lit up space around them as human and Vex ships exchanged fire. Through gaps in the fighting, Jack could see the determined Admiral Green's flagship directing the human defense. "Open a channel," Jack ordered. "Broadcast on all frequencies, human and Vex." Tom activated their communication system. "Ready, Captain." Jack took a deep breath. "This is Captain Jack Miller of the 87th Battalion. To Admiral Green and all human forces, hold your fire. You have been manipulated into this conflict. To the dominant Vex forces, we have information critical to your survival. Both sides must cease fire and listen." For several long seconds, there was no response. The battle continued around them, energy weapons and missiles flying between the opposing fleets. Then, unexpectedly, a voice came through their comm system. "This is Admiral Robert Green. Captain Miller was reported killed in action. Identify yourself properly or be treated as an enemy combatant." Jack had prepared for this. Authorization code Miller 774 Gamma Echo. "Check your records, Admiral. The 87th wasn't wiped out. We were sent here to die as a measuring stick for Vex capabilities. But we survived, and we've discovered something more important than this battle." There was a long pause. Jack could imagine the Admiral checking the authorization code, conferring with his officers, trying to understand this unexpected development. Finally, Green's voice returned. "Your code checks out, Miller, but that doesn't explain your current actions or why I shouldn't have you arrested for interfering in a military operation." "Because there's a third player in this system," Jack replied. "A faction manipulating both humans and Vex against each other. We have proof, transmitted to your science officer's station now." Tom sent the data package they had prepared, combined intelligence from their observations and Krav's research, evidence of the secretive Vex ascendancy faction that had been working behind the scenes, encouraging conflict between humans and the other Vex factions. "The ascendancy wants us to destroy each other," Jack continued. "They've been feeding false intelligence to both sides for years. This battle is exactly what they wanted." As if to punctuate his words, a new set of ships appeared at the edge of the system, sleeker and more advanced than the dominant Vex vessels. The true enemy revealing itself. "Admiral," Jack said urgently, "those ships belong to the faction we've identified as the Ascendancy. They're here to clean up whatever's left after we've weakened each other. We need to stop fighting each other right now." There was no immediate response from Green, but Jack could see changes in the human fleet's formation. They were shifting to face the new threat. Similarly, the dominant Vex forces had begun to regroup. Then a new voice joined the channel, the distinctive tones of Krav, translated through their system. "Dominant Command, this is Technical Chief Krav of the Modernist faction. The human captain speaks truth. Ascendancy has deceived all. Evidence transmitted to your systems now. They are the true enemy of all Vex kinds. For several tense minutes, nothing seemed to change. The human and dominant Vex fleets maintained their positions, still partially engaged with each other, while watching the approaching Ascendancy ships. Then Admiral Green's voice returned. "Captain Miller, I don't know how you've survived, or what you've been doing on that planet, but your evidence is compelling. I'm ordering a temporary ceasefire with dominant Vex forces. Get to my ship. We need to talk. Quickly." Jack looked at his team, seeing hope and disbelief mingled on their faces. They had done the impossible, stopped a battle between sworn enemies, and revealed the true threat. "We're on our way, Admiral," Jack replied. "And I'm bringing someone you should meet." As their shuttle changed course toward the Determined, Crab's vessel emerged from hiding to join them. Together, human and Vex, they approached the flagship of the human fleet. The battle of twin betrayals hadn't ended in mutual destruction as planned by the Ascendancy. Instead, it had created the first true alliance between species who had been manipulated into hating each other. The real fight was just beginning. But for the first time, they would face it together. The combined fleet of human and Vex ships approached Terminus with weapons ready. From the bridge of the Determined, Jack watched the dusty orange planet grow larger on the view screen. It looked different from this perspective, less like a prison, and more like a battlefield waiting to happen. "Strange days," Admiral Green said, standing beside him. The Admiral was a tall man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. "A week ago, I was ordered to finish what we thought was a failed mission. Now I'm working with aliens we've been fighting for years." Jack nodded. "The Ascendancy has been playing us against each other for a long time. They wanted us to weaken each other while they prepared their real invasion." On the other side of the bridge stood Krav and two other modernist Vex. Their presence on a human warship would have been unthinkable before. Now they were valued allies. Even more surprising was the dominant Vex commander, General Tark, who had reluctantly joined their alliance after seeing the evidence of Ascendancy manipulation. "Scans show heavy Ascendancy activity around their main fortress," Tom reported from his station. After proving his technical skills, he had been given temporary access to the flagship's systems. "They're bringing in reinforcements through some kind of portal technology." Admiral Green frowned. "They know we're coming." "Of course they know," Krav said through its translator. "They have observed us making peace. This disrupts their long plan. They will fight very hard now." The plan they had developed was dangerous but necessary. While the combined fleet engaged the Ascendancy ships in orbit, ground forces would attack the fortress itself. Jack and the surviving members of the 87th Battalion would lead the assault alongside modernist and dominant Vex forces. Their goal: reach the central command chamber where the Ascendancy controlled its operations. "Time to go," Jack said, looking at Anna, Mark, and the other soldiers of the 87th who had joined them on the flagship. "Our transport leaves in 10 minutes. As they walked to the shuttle bay, Anna fell in step beside him. "We started with 500 soldiers. We're down to 172. Not great odds for saving the galaxy." Jack smiled slightly. "Better odds than we had when we crashed on that planet expecting to die." The descent to Terminus was smoother this time, with proper ships and no one shooting at them. As they approached the landing zone, Jack could see the space battle beginning above them. Flashes of light as human and Vex ships engaged the Ascendancy fleet. They landed 3 miles from the Ascendancy fortress, a massive structure built into a mountain that hadn't appeared on any of their previous scans. The combined ground force of humans and Vex moved out immediately, using the rocky terrain for cover. "Just like old times," Mark said as they took positions behind a ridge. "Except this time, we have proper backup." Jack looked at the mixed force behind them. Humans in their battle armored alongside blue-marked modernist Vex, and the larger, more heavily armed dominant Vex warriors. An impossible alliance forged through desperation and a common enemy. "First wave, move up," Jack ordered through the comm system. The attack had to be perfectly coordinated. Any hesitation would give the Ascendancy time to bring more forces through their portals. The battle began with an explosion as modernist Vex technology disabled the fortress's outer defenses. Human and Vex forces surged forward together, covering each other as they advanced toward the massive structure. The Ascendancy defenders responded immediately. They looked like Vex but moved differently, faster, more fluid, almost as if they were partly made of energy rather than solid matter. Their weapons fired beams that could cut through even dominant Vex armor. "Push forward," Jack shouted as he saw the attack wavering. "We can't give them time to regroup." Lisa Jones, who had set up a field medical station behind the front line, was already treating wounded from both species. The sight of a human medic helping injured Vex soldiers would have been unimaginable weeks ago. The battle intensified as they reached the fortress walls. The Ascendancy defenders fought with desperate intensity, but the combined human Vex force pressed forward. Step by bloody step, they advanced into the structure. "Jack," Tom's voice came through the comm. "I'm picking up massive energy readings from the central chamber. They're powering something up. We need to move faster." "Anna, take your team left," Jack ordered. "Mark, right. I'll go center with Crab's forces. We meet at the central chamber." They split up, fighting through the fortress's winding corridors. The interior was unlike anything Jack had seen before, walls that seemed to shift and change, technology that looked more grown than built. It was alien even to the Vex allies fighting alongside them. Jack's team encountered heavy resistance as they neared the central chamber. The Ascendancy defenders were making a last stand. "We're pinned down," Anna reported over the comm. "Can't reach the chamber from this side." "Same here," Mark added. "Too much firepower." Jack looked at Krav, who was using a modernist scanning device. "Any other way in?" Krav studied the readings. "Small maintenance passage, too narrow for my kind. Human might fit." Jack checked the scanner. The passage was tight but possible. "I'll go. Cover me." Before anyone could argue, Jack slipped into the narrow tunnel. It was barely wide enough for his shoulders, forcing him to crawl through darkness toward a faint light ahead. He could hear the battle raging behind him, growing more distant as he moved deeper into the fortress. The passage ended at a small vent overlooking the central chamber. What Jack saw through it made his blood run cold. The chamber was enormous, filled with technology beyond his understanding. At its center stood a glowing column of energy that pulsed with a sickly light. Around it, dozens of containment units held what looked like suspended bodies, some human, some Vex, some of species Jack had never seen before. 3 Ascendancy leaders stood at control panels, their forms shifting between solid and energy as they worked. They were preparing something. The energy column was growing brighter, the pulse faster. Jack forced the vent open and dropped into the chamber. The Ascendancy leaders turned toward him, their faces, if they could be called faces, showing no surprise. "Human," one said in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You are too late. The assimilation has begun." Jack raised his weapon, but before he could fire, the leader gestured. Invisible force lifted Jack off his feet and pulled him toward the center of the room. "Your mind will join our collection," the leader continued, "as will those of all who resist. We do not destroy. We absorb. We improve." As Jack struggled against the force holding him, he understood the true horror of the Ascendancy. They weren't just conquerors. They were collectors, harvesting the consciousness of other species to add to their composite intelligence. "Why?" Jack managed to ask as he was pulled closer to the energy column. "Evolution requires the best of all," the leader replied. "Your species has adaptability. Vex have technical knowledge. Others have different qualities. Together in our collective, perfection is possible." Jack felt his consciousness starting to blur as he neared the column. In desperate defiance, he activated the emergency beacon on his suit, a signal to both his team and the fleet above. "You mistake unity for slavery," he gasped. "Real alliance comes from choice, not force." As if in answer to his words, explosions rocked the chamber. Anna and Mark had found another way in, blasting through walls with combined human and Vex explosives. Behind them poured soldiers of both species, weapons firing at the Ascendancy leaders. The force holding Jack faltered. He dropped to the floor as chaos erupted around him. Through the haze of battle, he saw Krav enter, carrying a device they had built together. A virus designed to separate the artificial neural connections the Ascendancy used to maintain their composite consciousness. "The terminal," Jack shouted, pointing to the main control panel. Krav moved with surprising speed for its bulky form, dodging energy blasts from the Ascendancy leaders. It reached the terminal and connected their device. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the energy column began to flicker. The Ascendancy leaders screamed in voices that contained multitudes. The containment units around the room began to open, releasing their captives. "It's working," Mark said, as he helped Jack to his feet. "The virus is breaking their network." The chamber shuddered as the Ascendancy's systems began to fail. The fortress itself seemed to be coming apart. "Everyone out," Jack ordered. "The whole place is collapsing." They retreated through the corridors, helping wounded and freed captives as they went. Behind them, the central chamber imploded as the energy column collapsed in on itself. They reached the surface just as the fortress began to sink into the ground, taking with it the remains of the Ascendancy's terrible technology. Above them, the space battle was ending. The Ascendancy ships, connected to the same network as their leaders, had shut down when the virus activated. Jack stood on a ridge watching the fortress disappear, feeling the weight of everything that had happened since they first landed on this planet. Beside him stood humans and Vex together, former enemies now bonded by a shared victory. "What happens now?" Anna asked, looking up at the ships in orbit. Jack turned to Krav, who was communicating with both Vex factions. "That depends on whether we can maintain this alliance." "Difficult," Krav admitted, "but necessary. Ascendancy may return. Other threats exist. Together, stronger than apart." As the dust settled over what had been the Ascendancy fortress, Jack thought about the strange journey that had brought them here. They had been sent to die in a war based on lies. Instead, they had found truth and forged peace. "Command wanted a strategic victory," Jack said quietly. "They got something much more important." "What's that?" Mark asked. Jack looked at the mixed group of survivors around him, human and Vex working together to tend wounds, share supplies, and plan for the future. "The beginning of something new," he answered. "Something worth fighting for."